When you stop overgiving, she reconsiders you. Most men are taught that love is proven through sacrifice. Give more time, more attention, more emotional labor. So when things start to feel off, the instinct is always the same. Try harder. But here's what nobody tells you: overgiving doesn't make you more valuable. It makes you predictable. When you overgive, you remove tension. You remove uncertainty. You remove the need for effort on her side. And without those elements, attraction slowly fades, not because she's ungrateful, but because human psychology doesn't attach value to what's always available. This is why the moment you stop overgiving feels confusing to her. You didn't announce it. You didn't argue. You didn't threaten to leave. You just stopped. And that quiet shift does more than any emotional speech ever could. Because now, she can't rely on your constant presence. She can't assume your emotional energy is unlimited. And for the first time, she has space to feel your absence. When you stop overgiving, you stop managing her emotions. You stop fixing her moods. You stop bending your life around her comfort. And suddenly, the dynamic changes. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. The man who stops overgiving isn't trying to punish her. He's reclaiming himself. And that's why she reconsiders him, not emotionally, but psychologically. Part 1. Overgiving quietly lowers your value. Overgiving doesn't look weak on the surface. It looks generous. It looks caring. It looks mature. But beneath it, overgiving communicates something dangerous. I don't require balance. When you give without limits, your time, attention, reassurance, and emotional support, you remove the need for her to invest. And when someone doesn't need to invest, they don't feel attached. Attachment grows through effort. When you always respond instantly, always forgive quickly, always adjust yourself to keep the peace, you send a message that your presence is guaranteed. And what's guaranteed stops being appreciated. This is why overgiving slowly lowers perceived value. Not because you're not enough, but because you're giving too much of yourself to someone who hasn't earned it. The moment you stop overgiving, the equation changes. Your attention becomes selective. Your time becomes structured. Your emotional energy becomes protected. Now your presence means something again. She starts to notice that access to you isn't automatic, that you're not always available to absorb stress, solve problems, or fill emotional gaps. And that subtle restriction triggers reassessment, because value isn't created by how much you give. It's created by what it costs to receive you. Part 2. Your absence creates awareness. When you overgive, your presence becomes predictable. You're always available, always responding, always showing up emotionally. And while that feels like commitment, it slowly removes the need for awareness on her side. She doesn't consciously think about you. She assumes you. Expectation replaces curiosity. But when you stop overgiving, without drama or explanation, that certainty disappears. You're no longer filling every silence, solving every emotional problem, or checking in to make sure everything feels okay. You haven't disappeared. You've simply stepped back into balance. That's when awareness turns on. Your absence isn't loud, but it's noticeable. Your reduced availability creates space, and the human mind hates unexplained gaps. She starts replaying interactions, noticing changes in your energy, questioning why things feel different. Not because you said anything, because you didn't. Silence forces reflection. Distance invites evaluation. She begins to wonder whether she misjudged your value, whether she took your presence for granted, whether you're still as invested as before. And that internal questioning is powerful, because it happens without pressure or confrontation. You didn't demand attention. You didn't withdraw emotionally. You simply stopped overextending. And now, instead of being on emotional autopilot, she's actively aware of you again. That's the shift. When a man stops overgiving, he doesn't create fear. He creates contrast. And contrast is what wakes people up. It reminds them that access to you isn't unlimited, and your energy isn't automatic. Awareness is the first step to reconsideration, and it always begins the moment you stop giving more than you should. Part 3. Balance is restored without conversation. One of the biggest mistakes men make is trying to talk their way into balance, explaining feelings, asking for effort, negotiating respect. But real balance is never created through words. It's created through behavior. When you overgive, the relationship becomes lopsided. One person invests, the other receives. And the more you give, the more imbalance you silently tolerate. Over time, this teaches her that effort from her side is optional. When you stop overgiving, that dynamic is forced into the open. You don't announce boundaries. You don't give ultimatums. You simply stop doing more than your share. Now, the relationship has to correct itself naturally. She either notices the shift and steps up, matching your energy, your effort, your respect, or she stays the same. And that outcome tells you everything you need to know. If she increases her investment, investment, it's not because you asked, it's because she chose to. And if she doesn't, you didn't lose anything, you gained clarity. Overgiving delays truth. Boundaries reveal it. By pulling back, you stop enabling imbalance. You stop cushioning the relationship with extra effort that hides a lack of reciprocity. And once that cushion is gone, reality takes over. This is why stopping overgiving feels powerful. It removes confusion. It removes false hope. It removes emotional exhaustion. Balance isn't forced. It's exposed. And when balance returns without conversation, respect follows naturally. Part 4 of emotional control changes how she sees you. One of the biggest shifts that happens when you stop overgiving is internal. You become emotionally controlled. You're no longer reacting to every change in tone. You're no longer trying to fix every mood. You're no longer explaining yourself just to be understood. And that composure doesn't go unnoticed. When a man overgives, his emotions are exposed and reactive. His mood rises and falls based on her attention. Even when he's kind, there's an underlying urgency, an unspoken need to be valued. But when you stop overgiving, that urgency disappears. You don't chase reassurance. You don't demand clarity. You don't spiral when things feel uncertain. You stay steady. That steadiness signals strength. Emotional control communicates that your sense of self isn't dependent on someone else's response. You're comfortable in uncertainty. You're okay with silence. You trust your own value enough not to overperform for approval. This is where perception shifts. She starts to see you differently, not as someone trying to earn her attention, but as someone who expects reciprocity. Someone who isn't easily shaken. Someone who doesn't collapse emotionally when the dynamic changes. And that calm can feel unsettling because it removes leverage. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer emotionally transparent. You're no longer easy to read, not because you're hiding, but because you're centered. When a man is centered, he becomes magnetic, not loud, not dramatic, just grounded. And that emotional control forces reassessment, because confidence doesn't explain itself, it simply exists. And once that happens, attraction follows naturally. Part 5. She reconsiders you because you chose yourself. In the end, she doesn't reconsider you because you pulled away. She reconsiders you because you returned to yourself. When you stop overgiving, you stop abandoning your own needs to maintain connection. You stop reshaping your life around someone else's comfort. And that shift changes how you carry yourself. Your time becomes intentional. Your energy becomes selective. Your presence becomes grounded. This isn't distance for attention. It's alignment. And alignment is felt. She senses that you're no longer operating from fear of loss. You're not afraid of silence. You're not clinging to outcomes. You're simply living your life with self-respect intact. That's what forces reconsideration. Because when a man chooses himself, he stops auditioning for approval. He's no longer trying to prove value. He embodies it. And embodied value is impossible to ignore. At this point, the dynamic is clear. If she wants access to you, it requires effort. If she wants your presence, it requires reciprocity. And if she can't meet that standard, you're prepared to walk without resentment. That readiness changes everything. Not because you threatened to leave, but because you genuinely could. And that quiet independence is what separates attachment from attraction. Stopping overgiving doesn't guarantee she'll stay. It guarantees you won't lose yourself. And when a man refuses to lose himself, he becomes someone worth reconsidering, not because he demanded respect, but because he lived it. That's the power of choosing yourself first.
This is Stickman Influence. See you in the next video.